Hello, today I'm going to show you how to make a stylised sugarcraft rose. This is some of the equipment we're going to be using today. We need some metal rose petal cutters, a cell bud, this is the 28mm, the largest size they do, a pair of pliers, 20 gauge wire, a cocktail stick, paintbrush, rolling pin, a flower drying tray, a foam pad, either a ball tool or a bone tool, some edible glue, icing sugar or tracks depending on how you like to roll out, and some petal veiners. You're also going to need a polystyrene block. Okay, so to begin with we need to set up the bud on the wire. So using the 20 gauge wire, I've cut this in half and I'm just going to push that through the cell bud and then twist it around. And then at the bottom there, just give it a twist so that the wires join up together. And then you can use the pliers just to give it a pinch and tighten it up. And that is your wired bud. Now I always use the cell buds because they're lightweight and you don't run any risk of the icing falling off. You can make this from icing, but where you're pushing wire into the icing, it might fall off after you've made the rose, so it's kind of better to use a cell bud. Next thing you need to do is decide on your cutters. So something like this is going to be too small. It needs to fit over the top and reach down to the bottom. This one is kind of okay, but I want a larger rose, so I'm going to use this large cutter here. And as you can see, it fits underneath and over the top. So that's the cutter I'm going to use. I've already pre-rolled my flower paste. We're going to be using purple today. I'm going to make some purple roses. So to begin with, you need one petal. And then we need to soften the edge of the petal. This is to get rid of that cut edge you've got there. It's rather a blunt edge. You want a nice soft edge. So either using the ball or the bone tool, run around the edge. It's almost like you're tracing around that edge in smooth movements from one side to the other. The bone or the ball tool is halfway on the petal and halfway off. I don't know if you can see that, so it should be sitting kind of like that when you're going around. Next thing you need to do is vein your petal. So I'm going to be using the diamond paste poppy veiner for this to begin with. Push that in, fold it over. And then you have your veined petal. Paint glue over the entire surface of this petal. Now you don't need much glue because it will start kind of sticking and slipping around. The bud should sit below the surface so you can get that nice tight cone on the top there. So stick all that down and then take one side and fold it around so you get a nice point there, and then fold the other side around that so you've completely hidden the cell bud inside. That's one of my big bugbears. I don't like it when you can see the cell bud. It's meant to be hidden, so you want a nice tight swirl at the top there. So that's your first petal done. We're going to move on to the next two. So take another two petals out. This is a Stay Fresh mat, by the way. It stops the flower paste from drying out whilst I'm working. You don't need to roll out all of your petals in one go. I'm doing it just for the speed of this video, so you don't get to watch me rolling out paste. So again, we're going to go round and thin the edge, and then just use your fingers to flatten them because you don't want to put them into the veiner and then fold the paste over on itself. Okay, so that's the next two petals done. So for these two, you'd want to paint glue from roughly just over halfway up, probably 2/3 up the petal, down to the point at the bottom. Take your bud and then lay it down. So I've got my seam there. I'm going to put that down like that and then fold that left hand side of the petal down and smooth that against the bud. Leave the right hand side free and then take your other petal, lay it on the other side, and again left hand side down and in, and then you can lay the right hand sides of the petals over the previous left. That's how you get that nice spiral effect. So I always stick down the left hand side of the petal to the bud, and the right hand side flips over the top of the next petal. So I'm just going to open that up a little bit. And if you want to, you can also gently fold over the petals, so just use a stroking motion just to bend the petals. Now if your paste is dry and it looks like it's not moving, it's very likely to crack at this point, so you need to do this as you work. Okay, so that's your spiral there. So the next one we're going to do is 3 petals. Now for these petals we're going to roll the top edges of them, so you get that, begin to get that stylized rose look. So it's the same deal again, we're just adding another process onto the end, so softening the edges of the petals. And then veining them. And we're also going to add another vein step into this one. We're going to use this one, which is actually a rose petal veiner. I'm going to put it right towards the top there because it has some really nice kind of folds and pleats in it. Push down. And gently peel it away and put it into your flower drying tray. And you're going to repeat for all of these. Okay, so that's those 3 petals there. So they're sitting in there, slightly keeping their shape, because you don't want a flat looking petal. This is a nice way to kind of get them to get that curved shape. Next thing we're going to do is roll the top edge over. So you need a cocktail stick for this, and it's like you're curling hair. So you just begin to roll the paste around the cocktail stick. And do that twice, so that you end up with a nice point towards the top edge of the petal, and then lay that in your flower drying tray and push it down slightly so it's holding a shape. So again, if I can do it that way, so it's just rolling, pull that out, go to the other side. The point should be as close to the opposite side of the bottom point as possible. Now we're going to leave those to dry for a bit because they are very floppy. If you look at them, they can't hold their own weight at the moment. So we need them to be able to support themselves a little bit. So I'm going to pop those to one side and start work on the 5 petals, which is the next row. So let's get rid of all this excess paste. You should always keep your flower paste in a little plastic bag or in the original packaging that it came in, because it does dry out really, really quickly. Now I've been rolling out on Trex today because the icing is quite a dark icing. I found that the icing sugar would kind of discolour it a bit, so I've gone for Trex. You can use whatever you find most comfortable. With the Trex though, you have to kind of rub it into the board and then remove the excess, so it's just got a very light coating. Otherwise you'll find when you're rolling out it's just sliding around. Another thing to watch out for, if you're having trouble with the frilling thing that we're doing here, the softening the edge, it might be because your paste is too thick. If the tool is kind of getting stuck and juddering a bit, then try rolling your paste a little bit thinner next time. So I'm just popping these in the flower drying tray for now. I've still got to do the second vein on them. Normally you'd work with your roses in segments. So if you're doing 3 roses, I'd do the centre swirl and the next 2 petals that I've already shown you first, and I'd do that on all of the roses, and then I'd start working on the row of 3 petals, and then I'd start working on the row of 5 petals, so they're all done. For today's video, I'm just going through in one. You do run the risk though, of where the glue's not had a chance to set, that the petals that you've already put on there could slide around, so it's kind of better to do it in stages as opposed to kind of rushing through. So back to curling the edges again. I hope you can see this. So I'll just line that up there with my thumb and then use my thumb to roll and then pull that out. If you're having trouble with the icing not wanting to kind of roll around the cocktail stick, you can add a little bit of Trex to the cocktail stick and use that to kind of bind it so that it picks up that first little bit of icing and starts turning it. It is one of those things where you have to kind of get used to holding the cocktail stick and learning how to spin it. If you do end up with a petal that's not come out very nicely like this one, then you can just use your fingers just to kind of recurl. Apparently I'm made of butterfingers today. So hopefully the time I've done these 5, then we'll be ready to stick the 3 on. It's the same again, you need to stick the left hand petal down first and then the right hand side petal overlaps the left of the next petal. If you're having trouble kind of getting your head around that, what I would advise you doing is only gluing the left hand side of the petal and then getting them all onto the flower, getting them in position and then going around and gluing down the right hand side. So I'll show you on this one what I mean. So instead of painting glue over the entire petal there, get rid of that glue, I'm just going to paint glue on that bottom corner. Can you see that? So from there across. That way I cannot possibly stick down that right hand side of the petal and make a mistake with the spiral effect. Okay, so take your rosebud again. You want to make sure this bit of petal here lines up with the top of the rose. So you can see there, so that should be at the same height. So I can only stick my left hand petal, left hand side of the petal down, go round and do the same, add the next petal and the next petal, until you've got them making a complete rotation around the bud there. So now you can go around and glue in your the right hand side, sorry, now I'm getting confused. So I've now glued all of the sides of the petal down, so now it's a case of going around the bottom and pushing that in towards the bud there. You notice that petal there is flopping. So if you're having troubles with petals kind of moving around after you've done it, you can either add a little bit more glue so they're supported a little bit higher, because this is kind of the beginning of the rose, so you don't want it to be too open, you want it quite tight at this stage, something like that. Then you can twist the wire and pop it into your tray like that, so it's drying upside down. Obviously make sure it's not leaning or knocking onto anything, so where are we? Something like that. Okay, so let's have a look at these. So these are nearly ready now, so I'm going to start gluing those. I'm going to glue the entire bottom of the petals. Like I was saying earlier, if you're still unsure, then just do the left hand side. Okay, so you lift your petal, and again make sure the top of that petal lines up with the top of the rose, and place that against the bud, and then go around and add your petals. So that one there has dropped quite a lot, so I need to lift that one up, and it's best to kind of keep looking as you're going, because if you've made the full rotation and you've stuck it all down, it's going to be really, really hard to move them. So I'm just using that hand as a kind of cradle for them, and then I gently spin them when I add my next petal in. Unfortunately, I'm having issues today because the Trex has made the paste sticky, so I'm ending up with it sticking to my hand rather than sticking to the cell bud there. If this was a white flower, I would definitely still be using icing sugar. So I've got a floppy petal there, so I'm just going to go around and add a little bit more glue just to support it a bit. Now, because you're going to be working upside down at this stage because all the petals are going to want to flop, the best thing to do once you've kind of got them down is to support it with your hand like that, so you can have a look and check that the placement is okay. So I'm quite happy with that one. That petal needs to move a little bit, I think. And then we've got our flower there. So any last minute adjustments, then do them now. And then keep going back and checking and making sure you're happy with it, because once it's dry, it's not going to move. So that's my rose there. The placement's all okay. And again, I'm going to dry this upside down, so I'm just going to make a hook on the wire there. So these are, is a rose, should I say, that I made earlier. Where it's been drying upside down, this one's kind of bent a little bit. So before it's completely set, I need to go through and make sure that those petals are nice and open. Now, if you want to do a larger rose, then you're going to want to do another row of 7 petals around this one. And again, it'll be 9 petals after that. To finish off your rose, you're going to need to make a calyx. I'm going to use the same colour paste as the rose because I'm doing a stylized rose. If you're doing a more realistic one, then you're probably going to want to use like a pale green and then dust it to finish it. Okay, so that's my standard calyx there. I need to kind of jazz it up a little bit now. Just going to lay that on there. And again, we're softening the edge, running from the base to the tip of each of the leaves there. And then finally, we're going to add in some little feathered shapes to the edge of each of the leaves, just to kind of stop them looking so flat. Okay, then it's a case of turning it over and gluing the back. And then you want to take your rose, straighten the wire as best you can, and then push the wire down into the middle of the calyx and then thread it up. Now I use my hands to support the leaves as it goes. Take that up and then flip it upside down, and then I can just start pushing the icing so the glue starts to stick. And that is the back of your rose finished. Next thing you need to do is tape the stem. If you're doing competitions, particularly Cake International, I got caught out. I didn't tape all of my stems, so you're going to need to do this. It neatens up the flower drastically. So this is florist tape here. To activate it, you just give it a stretch, and then put it on like that, and then just twist it. Now it's not particularly sticky, it's the act of your hands twisting and pushing that will start to bond that. So it's just a case of twisting the stem and pinching as you go, so you're feeding the wire down to the bottom there. Now if you want a thicker stem, you can go up and down multiple times just to thicken it up. I'm just doing it today just to neaten the stem, and then running my fingers up and down just to kind of smooth off any of those little kind of pleats and bits that have come into it. It's actually better to use half width florist tape rather than this. This is quite thick and chunky. Okay, so that is your finished rose. So I'm just going to finish off the rest of my roses now, and then I'll show you a photo of it at the end. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye.